Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, November 27th. What are you thankful for? Perhaps the truth? Tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in America. This is when we celebrate thanks and give thanks, presumably to God, for this new nation and this refuge for political and religious freedom. Freedom from the oppression of tyrannical European leaderships. What these Europeans left there known for a bunch of unknowns in the New World. They wanted to worship God as they felt led, and they wanted to provide a life for their children and future generations without the tyranny of an oppressive government. This Thanksgiving that we have is also for the rights that have been bestowed in writing by our founding documents, including the freedom of press and the freedom of expression. From these freedoms, some 240 odd years later, we have all sorts of claims and discussions and activists in the public realm. One in particular, the international movement, but a movement with deep roots in the U.S., is the BDS movement, Boycott, Divest, and Sanction. BDS is a movement that is dedicated to destroying Israel through economic means, through bad PR, and through cutting it off from activities on the world stage. It is a movement that is deep afoot in college campuses and creeping into high schools and middle schools in North America. And it is active in political entities such as the U.S. Democrat Party and the UK's Labour Movement Party. It also seeks to influence international policy organizations such as the UN and the EU. While it claims to be a social justice movement, pardon my giggle, it is in fact a terrorist organization that has traded weapons of guns and rockets for internet profiles and campus clubs. Keep in mind, its founders still have one arm on the violent approach and one arm on the political and educational realm. Documentation has proven that BDS founders and its activists are funded by the same monetary and philosophical origins that the hardcore anti-Semite terrorists are. Those who seek to destroy Israel and subjugate Jews worldwide. The EU recently succumbed to pressure of the BDS ideas by refusing to allow products that are made in Judea, Samaria, the Golan Heights, and East Jerusalem to be labeled as made in Israel. For those, for example, East Jerusalem and the Golan are considered legally to be part of sovereign Israel. So this is a curious ruling. The EU Court of Justice in the past only advised that these products not be labeled as made in Israel. But just about 2 weeks ago, they have now ruled it as a requirement. And if any of its 28 member states have production facilities that do include this label, it is subject to action or reaction by the EU. So why is this ruling such a problem? Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, the EU Court of Justice made this ruling in the middle of the rocket barrage that Israel was under, and half the nation was shut down completely because it was hunkering down. Well, that to me is a slap in the face. Why couldn't they just wait a couple days to see that hostilities had ceased before they make this ruling? So it was like pouring salt in the wound. The other point to make is that the EU is doing this as a pure example, in my opinion, of the definition of anti-Semitism. It is the 3 Ds: delegitimize, demonize, and double standards. The action by the EU is a good illustration of double standards. No such labeling requirements or restrictions are noted for products that are made in other so-called disputed territories, including Tibet, Northern Cyprus, and Western Sahara. In fact, the EU has an agreement for fishing rights off Western Sahara with the so-called disputed governments. Labeling the Judean products means it will encourage Europeans to fall prey to the BDS movement to boycott products from Israel as a whole, and Judea or Samaria in particular. This is the same action the Nazis took in the 30s when they tried to economically cut Jews from their own livelihood. The ironic part of this is that Jewish Israeli firms operating in Judea and Samaria are subject to Israeli employment law. As such, wages, working conditions, and general prosperity for the Arab population that lives and works there, they greatly benefit. And most of these folks, when interviewed, prefer to work with the Israeli employers for the legal protections and the better working conditions and the upward mobility. To attempt to drown a Jewish business is the drowning of the Arab population in these areas, the very population the BDS movement claims it's trying to help. But this is another example how the BDS activities are not about helping Arabs in the region or achieving peace of any kind or any kind of prosperous coexistence. It's about hating Jews and limiting Israel or eliminating Israel. Keep in mind, President Abbas of the PA already stated openly in more than one speech that the only way to peace in the West Bank is for it to be, quote, free of settlers. This means free of Jews. So the condition for peace is to remove any Jews from the area completely. No sense of coexistence. Now, keep in mind that in Israel, no one's saying that the Arab population cannot live in any given place. So by the EU endorsing this labeling protocol, it is endorsing the idea that a region being free from Jews is an acceptable proposition. Remember, think about any other group of people being told that they cannot move into, live, or work in a certain area. It's absurd. We have entire laws in America under the real estate legislative actions that prevent this. So also, to include the Golan Heights and East Jerusalem in this EU ruling is an open act of anti-Semitism, again, in my opinion. The Golan is recognized by the U.S. as under the sovereign rule of Israel. And for it to be in any other hands is a danger to all of our security and our interests. I'm not sure who the EU thinks that the Golan should go to because Assad is crazy and ISIS wants to destroy everyone. And I guess Russia could maybe do it. I don't know. Under this ruling, if a menorah is made by a Jewish artisan in East Jerusalem, a city that has been historically identified as Jewish for over 3,000 years and noted to be its capital, it cannot have a Made in Israel sticker. This ruling by the EU must be protested by its 28 member states and its European citizens. It is so blatantly anti-Semitic that it singles out Jews and Israel under standards that it applies to no other. And as this ruling endorses fallacious and dangerous notions that it is okay for Jews to be labeled in such a way that they are economically discriminated as well as not allowed to be in certain places, well, this is just a nightmare and not acceptable to anyone with general sensibilities if it is laid out for what it really is. Israel represents less than 1% of the landmass in the Middle East, and yet it is under a constant and acceptable drumbeat that they vacate or live subjugated by the Muslim neighbors. And it is accepted all the way up to the highest levels of leadership. This is a travesty that we here continue to work tirelessly to shine a light on. So the truth of these organizations and these actions are made known to the world at large, and how that the truth is that Israel and what the Jewish people are and how they contribute to society should be celebrated and recognized, and at the very least they should enjoy the same human rights and protections that any other ethnic group, religious group, or national set of citizens should be desired for. Even citizens that live under oppressive regimes, we wish for them to have equal rights and protections. May I encourage you all during this gift buying and gift giving season that you perhaps go out of your way to buy products made in Judea, Samaria, East Jerusalem, or the Golan, or Israel in general. It's called a boycott. And if you just Google boycott Israel, B-U-Y-C-O-T-T, you will find links to all sorts of online shops that sell products from these areas, and you can even find links to geographical locations so you can see what shops in your area would sell these things so you can shop in person if you happen not to be an online shopper. Remember, commerce helps all those involved. Economic prosperity floats all boats. I think we all know that from living in America. Shavua Tov. Have a great week and happy Thanksgiving.